Tonight we're going to go over creating a personal budget. So this is a new technology for me, and tonight we're going to go over creating a personal budget. So just give me another second here. I'm going to make sure that the Facebook Live is actually running. Okay. All right, perfect. So I should be able, hey Megan, I should be able to see the comments from this screen on my left. And if anybody is in the Zoom chat, I'll be able to see the Zoom comments too. So if you prefer to listen from Zoom, which might be a little bit more clear, rather than listening over Facebook Live, you could log into Zoom instead. So just as far as the technology goes here, there's a little bit of a lag between the Zoom meeting and the Facebook Live comments. So I'm gonna try to check comments periodically, and I'll get back to the attendees and see if you guys have any questions. This is actually really distracting, seeing the comments. So I can see Kelly's watching, Nicole's watching, Zach. So thanks everyone for joining in. So I'm just gonna try to put this in presentation mode. So I really wanted to figure out a way to help people right now. And first of all, just a disclaimer, I'm not a financial planner, I'm not an accountant, I'm just a lowly old loan officer. So none of this, this is all just my opinion. I work with hundreds of people a year, helping them on their mortgage financing. Part of that process is creating a budget. So I thought that I could just share what I do personally. I'm not suggesting that you do it, but it's just some ideas for you to look at. So today we're going to go over why a budget matters, what a budget is if you don't even have one, and just kind of the steps to hopefully make it easy and create a budget for your household. I like to think of our household as a small business. So you have income coming in and you have expenses going out. Hey Jamie. Okay, I'm gonna stop reading the comments so I don't get distracted. I'll come back every couple slides. So you have your income coming in, you have your expenses going out, and hopefully you're able to, run your household and save a little bit, save for a rainy day fund, maybe trips. Obviously what's on everybody's mind right now, of course, is kind of the unknown. So personally for me, I love numbers, I'm in finance. So I feel like I'm in control when I have a budget in place and I know I can follow it. And then when unexpected things come up, I can refer back to that budget and I can tweak things, hopefully, and figure out a way to, make things work at the time. I totally understand that some people are going through serious changes right now, job loss, sickness. I want to be fully respectful of that. This isn't obviously meant to cure anything, but hopefully it just provides a little bit of help. So this is a simple budget worksheet, and email me. If you're watching on Facebook or if you're in the Zoom program, I probably don't have your email address. So shoot me a text, shoot me an email, or whatever, Facebook message me. I'll send over the budget worksheet that we're gonna go through tonight. And then you can try it out later on. So again, really the big pieces of the budget, they can be broken down into three major things. You have your net income that comes into your house. You have your expenses, both fixed expenses and variable expenses. And then at the end, you're gonna end up with your net. So we're gonna run through how to actually do that. Now, if you really hate working with numbers and you really hate thinking about your finances and your expenses, and it just gives you the heebie-jeebies, do this one step at a time. So come back to this video later on, it's gonna be recorded, and just do it one step at a time. First of all, where I would start is kind of the easier part. Just take a look at your income sources. So you're gonna start by writing down any income that you have. So for this whole presentation here, in the sample worksheet that I'm using, I just kind of randomly decided I would look at typical income and typical expenses for a family, a household with probably 2 adult incomes, maybe like mid-40s, maybe they have 3 kids. I wanted a situation that had a good amount of expenses actually. So if you're looking at this income and you're thinking like, wow, that's a lot of income, well, just wait till we get to the expenses, because this will sort of bring the whole situation together. So when you're thinking about your income, it's really important to think about your net income. So people get confused a lot between the gross and the net income. Gross income is like, say you work a job and you have a salary and it's, I don't know, $40,000 a year. That's your total. But what actually goes into your bank account is your net income. That's after taxes come out, after expenses come out. So that's the money that you actually can use when you're creating your household budget, is the net amount. So write down everything: full-time jobs, part-time jobs, side jobs, whatever hustles you have, gambling habits, kidding about that one, but if you're really good at gambling, whatever, write it down. Probably stop gambling. But if you're self-employed or you're a commission earner, you want to be really conservative. So for self-employed or commissioned people, it's kind of different. What I would suggest you do is take a really long history. If you've been in business for a while, you want to probably average out 2 years. And again, if you're self-employed or you own a business, it can be confusing. What you want to think about is your net income that you're actually paying yourself. So, that's kind of another topic, is making sure your business expenses are separate from your personal expenses. But basically, if you're self-employed, just try to take a conservative average, because you're going to have good times, bad times, it might be seasonal, whatever. So that's the income side of things. If anyone has questions about figuring out your net income, feel free to throw them in the chat and I'll come back to it. So once you get through step 1 and you've written all your income down, take a breather, because this is where it gets a lot more difficult. So you're going to start going through your expenses. Now, when you think about your expenses, I don't want you to just dive in and start freaking out about stuff. Just write down what you think you pay, or what you pay right off the top of your head. So you probably have your mortgage or your house payment. You could even, if you want, get out a scrap paper right now if you're actually watching this whole thing, and just start writing down a list. You probably have car loans, student loans, personal loans. I know this is all the stuff you don't want to think about, but just write it down in a general category. I put my husband on here because he's really expensive. He likes to buy tools and all that kind of stuff. So think about your, hey Kate, think about your fixed expenses and also the fun expenses that you have, and just write down a big long list. You're going to notice that you have fixed expenses and variable expenses. So I just want to talk about the difference there. This is a really important thing to differentiate, and it's really, really important now for a lot of people that are trying to think about how to kind of maybe cut back or just move around their budget and figure out what's going to work for them. So for those that are just jumping on, we just went through figuring out your net income, and now we're starting to look at expenses. So when you're thinking about your fixed expenses, those are like the things you have to pay or else something bad will happen. So, your mortgage or your rent, you don't want to miss that. Your car loan, you want to pay that because you don't want your car taken away. Student loans, you'll probably get in trouble if you don't pay those. So these are all really things that are kind of attached to tangible items that you really can't change easily, even if you wanted to. Variable or flexible expenses, those are expenses that you do have control over. So you have control over how much you spend on food, how much you spend on shopping, gifts, traveling, memberships and subscriptions. Be really careful of phone apps that you just subscribe to and then you forget about. So those are the kind of things you want to think about when you're writing down your expenses. And again, for now, just keep writing out the category. Don't worry about how much you're paying yet or trying to lower the amount at all. That's going to be the next step. So like I said before, if you hate numbers and this is already giving you anxiety, just do it one step at a time, one day at a time. Start with your income, then start with this list of all of your expenses. And, before we get into the next step, which is kind of the most difficult one, you might want to pick a good time of day where you really feel super rested, or maybe you want to just pour a glass of wine and figure out the expenses over some wine. So again, if anyone has questions between the difference of flexible and fixed expenses, throw them in the chat box, send me a message. So this is when we really dive in and we figure out the truth about our expenses. I wanted to share a little hack that I like to do. So most people use online banking now. If you don't use online banking, it's okay. You can still do this step. It's just a little bit more cumbersome. So I would suggest, again, to keep it easy and not overwhelming, just look at one most recent bank statement. So what you're gonna do now is you're actually gonna figure out how much you're paying for all of those different expense categories that you wrote down. And it might surprise you. It might not. Maybe you're really good at knowing your own budget, but I don't know. I always get surprised. So here's just an example. The hack is, by the way, you can go into your bank account and you can sort your account by the description. So do you see on this slide, it might be kind of small if you're on your phone, but you can sort the description. So this is alphabetized. So all the expenses are in order from A through Z. So I just screenshotted the beginning. So you can see there's a couple charges with Apple and then Big Y, which is the grocery store. So this makes it super easy because at one glance, I can then say, oh, Apple, I didn't even have that on my expense list. iTunes, right? Everybody spends money on that now. So I need to add iTunes to my expense list. And then I can put down, I've got to go and look at these because what are these charges for iTunes? Obviously songs or whatever, and then same thing. You can see Big Y here, so that's groceries. So I can see in the last month, we went to the grocery store 4 times, and this is probably like about $450. So you can start to put together your categories that way. So what you wrote down in the beginning, again, you might think you pay. When you actually start to do the deep dive into your bank statements, you really get to see what you're actually paying. And what I always suggest, start with 1 month, but then go back, look at your 1 month, then take some time off, relax, go back, try to look at a second month, then a third month. Ideally, you want to go, as far back as you really feel like, because you want to get a solid average of everything. You're going to take that average and you're going to put it into each of the expense categories. So here's coming back to our worksheet. We had our income first. Now we've gone through all the steps of figuring out our expenses. So based on the deep dive that you just did into your bank accounts, and remember to do bank accounts and credit card statements too, because you have expenses in both accounts. So then you're gonna put it in all these categories here. So we're not gonna go through all of these. This is just an example. So in this budget that I was using as just an example, and I wanted to show a good amount of variety of expenses here, we've categorized everything. And the total monthly, by the way, monthly expenses is what we're looking at, is $79.85 a month. Now I wanna just point out, we're gonna go over this in our next step. Transfer to savings, the third one up from the bottom, $350. That is something you should budget into your expense budget, is actually a transfer into your savings account, because it's gonna make you do it. So we have a budget. We're finally there, we made it. So we have our net income that we started with at the top, which was $8,000. We have our whole table of monthly expenses, and we already factored in $350 into savings. We actually have a net. So here's the reduced budget on the right side, $8,000 income, $79.85 debt or expenses, sorry. And then we actually have $15 extra. So you're really able, if you wanted to to increase that transfer to your savings to $365 in this case. And that's our next step here. So the savings goals. So obviously one purpose of having a budget, it's not just to be able to pay your expenses, right? It's to be able to save for things so that you can maybe get something new or whatever, save for college for your kids or go on a trip. So in this case, there was $365 left over. And what I always suggest people do is set up that to get transferred to a separate bank account, because then you're not even going to remember you had it. Just put it aside, have it go direct deposit out of your payroll into a separate bank account. If you did that, you'd save $4,300 a year. So without even really knowing it. And then you have that fund there. Obviously, depending on your financial situation, again, this is a simple household budget. So we're just talking about, income and expenses and some liquid savings. Then you can get beyond that and you can go into all your other investments and your retirement and all that, but that's a totally different conversation to have with a financial planner, not with me. But what I say as a guideline, and again, just a disclaimer that I said at the beginning, I'm not a financial planner, I'm not a CPA, I'm just offering my opinion out to help anybody if this is helpful. I always like to have at least 3 to 6 months liquid in my savings account for emergencies. And so basically having this budget in place really helps be able to have control over your income and your expenses, and then making sure that you're able to attain that savings goal. Once you have attained the savings, so you have your budget in place, you have your at least 3 to 6 months savings, and we're all feeling that right now. I mean, this is just a perfect time, and it's a terrible time, but it's making everybody think about finances and really feel the need for having that extra savings. So I get it. It's again, I'm just offering this up as help here if it helps anybody at all, and I hope it does. So as far as reducing debt, this would be future plans. Once you're back to having, a good amount of money saved, then you want to actually start to tackle some of your debt. So there's a lot of different theories and strategies for how to pay debt off. What I've always done is just tried to get rid of highest interest debt first. So here's just a quick example. And if anybody's feeling really brave and they want to try to answer this question in the chat box, go for it. So you have your car loan, your credit card, student loan, mortgage. They all have a different interest rate. They all have a different balance. Sometimes it can seem really daunting to try to figure out how to pay them all off, right? So you want to break them into small pieces. So which order do you think you would pay these accounts in? And the Facebook Live, it has a lag by about 30 seconds or a minute. So I might give away the answer first. But the answer is you would start with the credit card because it's the highest interest variable debt, right? You'd want to tackle that first. So once you already have your 6-month savings in reserves, then you can start using that extra $365 a month to tackle your debt. And you could probably get rid of that credit card pretty quickly. I mean, it's going to still accumulate interest, but maybe in about 6 months or so, you could have it gone. And then you'd move on to maybe your car loan, and then you'd want to keep last your student loans and your mortgage. And again, this is just an example, so it may not be what your student loans look like. All right, we did have an answer that finally came in. This is how far behind the Facebook is. Credit card, car, student loan, mortgage. Yep, that was correct, Caitlin. All right, awesome. So basically, just to summarize what we have gone over, and this was just going to be a quick snapshot. You can come back and watch it if you want to, or if you want a copy of the PowerPoint, email me, I'll send it to you. If you want a copy of the budget, email me or text or whatever, and I'll send it to you. So big takeaways are basically just remember to look at your bank and your credit card accounts. at least once a month and make sure that you're on budget, and if not, adjust your budget, or adjust your expenses, I should say. You want to figure out what you're actually spending money on, and then see where you can kind of trim back and make sure that you're meeting your savings goal so that you always have at least 3 to 6 months reserves for emergencies. And then from there, you can start working on tackling debt. So that is pretty much it for our budgeting workshop here. I am, because everybody is home now and we're not doing these in-person workshops, I'm trying to move them all to be online. So keep an eye out on my Facebook page, on the Applied Mortgage Facebook page. And I think our next one might be on refinancing. It's up in the air still, but keep an eye out. We've got a first-time homebuyer seminar in the works, and we've also got a panelist discussion with other industry professionals. So if you're thinking about buying a home right now and you're kind of just unsure either where to start at all, check out the homebuyer seminar that's coming up. If you're in the middle of the process and you're kind of concerned about what's going on with COVID-19 and the mortgage industry, then keep an eye out for that panel discussion too. And as always, you can text me, call me, email me. Here's all my contact information so you have it. And if I don't think anyone else has questions, so I'm gonna sign off. Feel free to reach out. I hope everybody has an awesome night.